What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at some more spoilers for Outlaws of Thunder Junction. As of recording, this entire set has been revealed now, so we have a bunch of more new commons to take a look at, as well as some new reprints. And like my previous spoiler reviews on this set, we're just going to be doing our initial reaction on the card, nothing too in-depth, and just kind of going over what the card does and whether or not I think it will have any sort of impact on the Pauper format in general. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely stick around. As always, if you enjoy the content that I create, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, I greatly appreciate the support. And the first card we're looking at today is Ambush Gigapede for 4 generic mana, 2 black. You get an insect with Flash. When Ambush Gigapede enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets a -2/-2 until end of turn. It's a 6/2. This card seems pretty janky. Definitely, I think it's probably only being played in booster drafts or sealed, so limited. I don't think this will be making any waves in the format. It is got a 6/2 body and it has a decent enter the battlefield effect. Does have flash as well. These are good things. But for 6 mana, I don't really think a lot of people are going to be running this. Probably no one at all. Now, if it gave -3/-3, I think, the 3 toughness is kind of that's a sort of thing that's pretty can be pretty pivotal in certain games. But generally I don't see this game played. All right. And next card we got is Ankle Biter for 1 green, you get a 1/1 death touch. It's a snake. So this card is, for its mana cost, it is, I would say, a good card. Uh, Definitely a playable creature, especially once you get a rancor on it or something. As only need to just assign 1 damage to the defending creature, and the rest tramples over. So probably pretty decent for Mono Green Stompy. That deck isn't really being played very much. Definitely see this card more making its way into Pauper Commander decks, as Finn the Fang Bear can't get enough of its little 1/1 Death Touch creatures. Next card we got is Conduit Pylons. It is a desert. When Conduit Pylons enters the battlefield, you surveil 1. You can tap it for a colorless mana, or you can pay 1 generic, tap it, and add 1 mana of any color. So this card I think is actually pretty good. The fact that it surveils is pretty interesting. Already we have a very similar land, especially in Tron decks, that scry one and basically does the exact same that this card does. I think this card could definitely find a home in Tron, especially things like maybe Flickertron, since they do like having playing out of their graveyard a little bit. Even Altertron could possibly make a use out of this card. It is pretty good, so I think this card may see a little play. It's going to be interesting to see whether the Tron players decide to go with this over some of the other lands that they already play. Next card is Consuming Ashes for 2 generic and 2 black. You get an instant. Exile target creature. If it had mana value 3 or less, you surveil 2. So not a very good targeted removal spell. Exiling is nice, and the surveil 2 is also nice, but for 4 mana, I mean, you're just going to play Cast Down or, Edicts and so many other different things that also get rid of creatures. I don't think this is going to get played. This definitely seems like limited only, in my opinion. Next, we have Corrupted Conviction for 1 black. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Draw 2 cards. So this is a reprint of a card that I think that got printed over like within the last year. I think it's from one of the Phyrexian sets that came out. Maybe I think it was last year. Uh, Definitely a good card. Doesn't see a ton of play. I have seen it in some brews as well. I don't think I've seen it in any really good like tier 1 or tier 2 decks. It's basically a functional reprint of Village Rites. Both these cards are very playable. The whole like aristocrats plan doesn't really get much play in the format. I think it just needs some more support or some bigger payoffs in order to do so. Definitely is a good card and is technically playable. Next we have Daring Thunder Thief for 3 generic and a blue. You get a Turtle Rogue, has Flash. Daring Thunder Thief enters the battlefield tapped, and it's a 4/4. And it just kind of sucks. I don't really know what else to say about it. It does have Flash, which is cool, but it enters tapped. So what's the point? Next, we have Dead-Eye Duelist. For 1 generic and a red, you get a human assassin that has a reach. For 1 generic and tap it, Dead-Eye Duelist deals 1 damage to target opponent. It's a 1/3. O- Doesn't deal only deals damage to opponents though. I mean, if it dealt damage to creatures, I think this you can maybe make an argument for it. Does have a 1/3 body, which is good. Has reach, but fairies don't get played very much. I mean, for the most part, in terms of fairies decks that you're probably gonna see, it's gonna be Dimir fairies. I don't really see this card being played in red decks against them. They're just gonna play things like Electrickery or End the Festivities to deal with those 1/1 flyers. Next we have Desert's Dew for 1 generic and a black. It is an instant. Target creature gets a -2/-2 until end of turn. It gets an additional -1/-1 until end of turn for each desert you control. This definitely seems like it's designed for limited since there are a bunch of deserts in in this set. Ton of new deserts, which is great. There is one deck, at least that I'm aware of, that does play deserts in constructed, but that deck is Turbo Fog, which is not in these colors. I have seen a Golgari Fog list, which is definitely just very much a more of a control list because they have access to black. Um, I don't think that deck is as good as the Simic Turbo Fog list. So I don't really know where this card is gonna go. The fact that it is doesn't deal damage as a removal card or doesn't have the destroy um, part on it, and it just reduces power and toughness, definitely makes it pretty good against animated lands if you're seeing a lot of that in the format and you are playing a bunch of deserts. And we do have these new Pinger deserts, which are pretty good. So there are some new deserts coming into the format, so maybe this could find a home somewhere. It definitely seems more of a Brewers card right now. I don't really know where it's going to go. The one deck that currently runs a bunch of deserts isn't going to use this. Next we have a Drover Grizzly for 2 generic and a green. It is a bear mount. When Drover Grizzly attacks while saddled, creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. It has saddle 1 and it is a 4/2. Possibly a mono green stompy card here. Mono Green Stompy gets a lot of different new cards every set, but it never seems to get the things that it needs to take it over the edge. It now having Trample, getting everyone Trample, does seem like pretty decent. Also, a 3 mana card. It's a 4/2 by itself, so it would become a 4/2 Trample. Is it enough to bring Mono Green Stompy over over the edge to where it can actually be competitive again? I'm not really sure. My gut is saying no, but it's definitely a new option for that archetype. Next we have Outlaw Medic for 1 generic and a white. You get a human rogue with lifelink. When Outlaw Medic dies, draw a card, and it's a 1/3. Now it has a 3 toughness, and it has lifelink. Those are nice things. I kind of wish instead of lifelink, it just gained you 2 or 3 life when it entered the battlefield, and then when it dies, you draw a card. Then this card, I think, would be very playable as it stands right now. I don't think so. It is maybe could find a home in an aristocrats type list since it has a die effect and draws you a card. So, with something like Deadly Dispute, you could create a treasure and draw 3 cards with it. That is honestly kind of nice, but Black White Aristocrats isn't, as far as I know, not really a deck right now. Maybe it could become one, but generally, I'm not really sure if it has enough support even within this own set to really become a thing. Next, we have Jailbreak Scheme for 1 blue. This card has Spree. So, for an additional 3 generic, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature can't be blocked this turn. Or, for additional 2 generic, target artifact or creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So, on the second side, it actually has something that is good. Basically you can get rid of whatever for 3 mana, get rid of whatever creature they're planning to enchant with all the glitters. So definitely it's definitely an option for blue, but we already have things like a null in the format in blue, which just seem like a better option against all the glitters piles. At least that's my opinion. That only costs 1 mana. This would cost 3 mana to be able to interact with them. You already have things like, boomerang or snap and all these other cards that are basically would do the same thing that this card does, but are just generally better because you would have to spend 3 mana versus 1 to 2 mana. Next, we have Take the Fall for 1 blue. It's an instant. Target creature gets -1/-0 until end of turn. It gets -4/-0 until end of turn if you control an outlaw and you draw a card. So basically a cantrip that reduces power, but only really good if you have an assassin, mercenary, pirate, rogue, or warlock on the battlefield, which you definitely do see some pirates and some rogues in some of the meta decks. Definitely you do see some pirates with you, you, things like Azure Fleet Admiral or Crimson Fleet Commodore. Those are pirates. So this could maybe be an okay thing in Is It Terror? Especially if you are on more of a grindy plan. Generally that deck is a little bit more grindy, not so turbo mill. And it seems like a lot of the Terror decks are going for more of a grindy mid-range plan over just trying to put out as many 1 mana 5/5s as quickly as possible. Also draws you a card, so this is nice. Will it replace anything? Like, is it going to replace things like Ponder, Consider, Preordain? My guess is not. It could be a piece of sideboard tech. I'm not really sure if they're gonna run it. Especially if Swiftspear was still around, I could probably see it. But Swiftspear is gone, so this card is looking a little bit less good. If this came out when Swiftspear was still legal, I probably have a stronger opinion on it being playable in the format. Definitely a playable card. Question is, will it see any? Next card we got is Take Up the Shield for 1 generic and a white. It is an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. This card is definitely playable. It can gain you life. The more power your creature has, the better. The more life you get. Also gets indestructible, so it works around someone just trying to lightning bolt your creature. Um, so that is kind of nice. Also gaining life. So this is definitely a decent card against red decks. I don't think it's gonna get played though. That's the thing. Is it's we don't really see a lot of these types of effects outside of unexpected fangs, but that is in a very niche sort of deck, or not niche rather, but you know you're it's in a much better deck. That deck doesn't run white. I have seen some Azorius Terror decks out there. This could maybe be an option for them, though that deck is definitely more towards the bottom of tier 2, doesn't really see much play. Though I don't think it's necessarily bad, it's just, is it Endomir Terror or even Mono Blue Terror just seem to be a little bit better. Definitely an option for Terror decks in blue and white. Again, not really a common thing we see in the format. Definitely playable, but probably not going to be. Next, we got Snakeskin Veil for 1 green. It's an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains hexproof until end of turn. And this is a reprint of a card that's been around for a while now. It's definitely a good card and does see play in I think it is Simic Infect, and is a great card for that deck as it increases their power and gives their creatures hexproof. Sees play there. Definitely, this card is playable, already been proven to be so, though it's only really in one deck as far as I know. Definitely a good card. Next, we have a Free Strider Commando for 2 generic and a green. You get a Centaur Mercenary. Free Strider Commando enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it if it wasn't cast or no mana was spent to cast it. It has plot of 3 generic and a green. It is a 3/3. This card is pretty janky. I mean, if you unearth it, it's kind of good. You get a 5/5 for 1 black, but then it has to be in your graveyard. Certainly, there's a lot of ways to get it into your graveyard. Could be okay in Dredge, but Dredge has so many better things going on right now. I doubt it's going to be using this card. Seems like very much a Brewers card if you are trying to go with that. But generally, I think this card is pretty bad. Next, we have Geyser Drake for 2 generic and a blue. You get a Drake that has flying. As long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It is a 2/3. So I really wanted to like this card as it is a cost reducer, which is awesome. However, where does it go? I've heard some people sort of spitballing around this card about how it might be something cool for fams or other people wanting to make their Flash deck dreams a reality. It definitely seems like best suited as the Flash archetype. Unfortunately, there are not really anything good for that archetype in Pauper at the moment. That may change in the future, so definitely a card to keep an eye on as new cards enter the format, and maybe something like Demir or Simic Flash can be a thing. Right now, it definitely can't be, so probably won't see play, though it's definitely a card that I got my eye on at least for now. Next, we have Giant Beaver for 3 generic and a green. You get a Beaver mount, has vigilance. Whenever Giant Beaver attacks while saddled, it gets a put a +1/+1 counter on target creature that saddled it this turn, and it has saddle 3. It is a 4/4. So basically, the more time you saddle this creature, the easier it becomes to saddle it. Definitely seems like a limited only card. I don't see this card entering the format in any way. Next we have Harrier Strix for 1 blue. Get a bird, has flying. When Harrier Strix enters the battlefield, tap target permanent. You can pay 2 generic and a blue, draw a card, then discard a card. It's a 1/1. Definitely seems a limited only thing here. You could probably get a lot of damage through in limited by just hitting them with a 1/1 over and over again. Also lets you draw cards when you start running out of gas. But generally, this card is pretty bad. Alright, okay, next we have Highway Robbery for 1 generic and a red. It is a sorcery. You may discard a card or sacrifice a land. If you do, draw 2 cards. Has a plot cost of 1 generic and a red. So plot cost is the same as its casting cost, which is, that's pretty interesting. However, the one thing I do not like about this card is that the discard part about it, or even, yeah, the discard or sacrifice part about it is the card's effect and not part of its cost. Now, if this was part of its cost, like if this was an additional cost of casting the spell, you had to either discard a card or sacrifice a land, but um, that is not how this card works. So definitely doesn't seem like a very good card for Madness, which is the main deck that utilizes things that allow them to discard things. That deck already has a lot better options available to it, like, say Thrill of Possibility. We just got Demand Answers. There's Witch's Mark, which is also a newer card that came out recently. All those cards, at least in my opinion, are infinitely better than this card. This definitely this card could be playable, though you basically sacrifice a turn in order to cast it for no mana. That is definitely something, as making sure you have the right colors of mana available in Madness to play your Madness cards is something you're going to want to make sure you're able to do. However, you have to sacrifice a turn to do this. Doesn't seem great to me. Next, we have Iron Fist Pulverizer for 4 generic and a red. You get a giant warrior. Has reach. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, Iron Fist Pulverizer deals 2 damage to target opponent. And you scry one. It is a 4/5. Definitely kind of looking at limited for this card, or possibly even Pauper EDH. Don't think this will be getting into constructed anytime soon. Could maybe find a place in some Cascade decks, as they are able to basically get that second spell cast pretty easily, especially if this was on the field and you played your Cascade card, found another card to cast. Now you've cast 2 spells, you get to do 2 damage and scry 1 then. So definitely maybe has an argument for, Cascade piles. I don't think it's a very good argument. Next we have Mirage Mesa. We get a desert. When Mirage Mesa enters the battlefield, as it enters, choose a color. Add 1 mana of the chosen color. If this entered untapped, I'd be all about it. It is a desert. There's also some cards in this set that synergize with you having deserts. But this card is just, we already have some similar cards to this in the format, and they do not get played. Don't think this one will be getting played either. Next card is a Mourner's Surprise for 1 generic and a black. Return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. I don't think these 1/1 red mercenary creature tokens are great. Um, this is like a worse raised dead. And it's especially because the mercenary, I don't think it does much other than you having an outlaw. Definitely synergizes with cards from this set, though a lot of those cards don't really seem very playable anyway, so I don't think this one is either. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. I got another batch of spoilers that we're going to take a look at tomorrow, so definitely tune in to tomorrow's video. And from there, I think we will have taken a look at all of the comments. But I would love to know what you guys think about the cards that we looked at today. Do you like or dislike them? Do you agree with my initial assessment of them? Are there ones that you think are going to be playable, or do you think this set is complete trash? Love to hear your thoughts about that. As always, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.